Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new PNSO release. As you can see, we've got the newest Ceratopsian in the line, the Coronosaurus. And this is definitely another very welcome addition to my collection, another species that I did not have prior. Something that PNSO often does is give me new species for my collection. You can see the packaging is pretty much as you usually see from PNSO, nothing super flashy. So we're going to go ahead and pop this open and we'll check it out. As far as what's included, of course, we have the booklet like we usually do when it comes to PNSO, which is always going to feature all sorts of really cool information and images and stuff. You'll usually have like some photo galleries of the figure and some really nice, hand-drawn images and stuff. Definitely worth checking out every time. Love these booklets. And we also have a poster like we usually do, and this one looks like it's potentially some dino toy photography, maybe? Oh yeah, definitely. So as you can see, it's basically our Coronosaurus just kind of walking along a nice kind of open landscape, looking beautiful. These posters are always like the perfect addition to the models themselves. If you had like a massive area to display all of your models, hanging these posters behind them would be a really fun idea. And then of course, our Coronosaurus itself, and this thing is absolutely beautiful. Not a surprise. I'm always super impressed with PNSO figures, but I feel like this one is another of the many instances where the figure in hand actually looks a lot nicer than the original prototype images kind of lead us to believe. I really quite like this one, and the greens are very appealing looking here in person. I love the, slight variations to the greens as well. If we actually bring the camera in and kind of readjust it, as I kind of push things around over here, and we bring it in for a nice closer look, you can see starting up here at the head sculpt, the skin texture and everything looks extremely impressive, very, very vibrant. You've got some nice variation of color here. To the face overall, the majority of the head has more so just dark tones, as you can see dark shades of like blacks and browns and stuff throughout the course of the head, and then of course some fairly dark greens as well. There's also a really nice dark wash that's been applied to the figure, which definitely helps to amp up the realism. We can see a very nice horn on the snout here. We can also see a nice brownish tone to the horn. The texturing of the horn actually looks pretty decent. Definitely looks a little bit better than some of the previous Ceratopsians. And when we are nice and close like this, you can, I think, really appreciate all of the different sizes and variation to the scales, as well as how good of a job that dark wash is doing of highlighting these scales. We can see the nostrils. We can also see the beak painted with a nice brownish tone. The eyes are painted with a yellow, given a nice black pupil, and they do have a very nice gloss coat to them to help them have that realistic eye shine. The inside of the mouth is painted with a pinkish tone. We can see the tongue right there, as well as the teeth, and the teeth are painted. And the fine detail inside the mouth is really well done. You can see a seam back there where the lower jaw is connected to the upper jaw, but that's not really a big deal in my opinion. You can also see maybe like a reddish wash that's been added in there. And again, the teeth painted in there, which you can see is super impressive, I think. The fact that you got such tiny little teeth painted so nicely. Moving up into the frill of our Ceratopsian, you can see some lighter tones here in the center area of the frill, with a darker tone moving down the actual center. That darker tone actually has two different shades of browns to it. We can see more horns and stuff up here on the top of the frill of the Ceratopsian. More really nice scales popping up here and there, kind of larger scales with much finer scales moving through the center areas of the frill. The transitions are super smooth as far as the paintwork goes, and we can even see a little variation of color to that area with like a really light tone and then some light brownish tones as well. Taking a look at the opposing side of the head, again, it looks really good over here, just like it did on the initial side. We can see a little bit of a seam there where the mouth is connected, but I think they did a fairly decent job blending that area. I think it looks pretty good. We have the ear back here as well, which is also a massive plus. If we go back to the first side we were taking a look at, you can see the head is kind of turned toward us. We can also see the ear there, but because it's turned toward us, we've got some nice wrinkling and folding in the skin in the neck. Moving back, you basically just have different shades and variations of greens with some darker patterning that moves through. Not a whole lot of flashiness when it comes to the colors of this one, but I think it's very natural overall. We have a nice walking pose as well for the Ceratopsian as it's kind of moving through, and again, that dark wash does such a great job of highlighting all of the scales as well as the skin wrinkles and folds and stuff, and slight creases to the skin. We have some osteoderms popping up here and there, as well as some really nice fine scales moving through through. Moving down, you can see the wrinkling of the skin here in the stomach because both legs are pushing into the stomach. The elbow as well. The musculature is also nicely displayed without being overly displayed or overly shrink wrapped or anything. We transition to a darker tone moving down into the foot, and you can see the toes sculpted quite nicely as well as the nails painted with a lighter tone. You'll see the same thing basically back here for the rear leg, but of course a much more impressive width on the leg because you've got the thigh, that big large ceratopsian thigh. We can make out the hip bone up here as well as some striping moving down, and again a little bit of a darker shade of green following down with some lighter shades moving toward the back of the thigh. The skin and musculature very nicely shown off right there. Same deal for the calf, which is big and bulging. We can see the knee right there. And then again transitioning to a darker tone moving down into the foot. I love how the foot is lifting up off of the ground as it's walking along. We can also see some slight kind of brownish tones in the lower part of the stomach before leading to the underside. And you see that back here. It's almost like a pinkish tone, but at the same time a little bit of a brownish sort of a look to it. But as you move back into the tail, you can see the tail leads down and then curves up just slightly. Really nice looking, not a whole lot going on when it comes to the patterning or anything like that. You can see a striping effect moving through the top of the Ceratopsian and also a darker shade of green following along the top of the Ceratopsian. Also some really impressive, really quite vibrant scales here on the underbelly as well as the cloaca present right there on the back of the dinosaur. There's also like a piece of material or hair or something right there. Oh, there it is. It's like a piece of hair, I guess, that came all the way from China here with this dinosaur, which is kind of random. But we also have the throat here on the underside of the dinosaur, and you can see more of those like brownish or pinkish tones moving along the undersides of the legs as well. And then if we take a look at the opposing side, for the most part, it's going to look pretty much the same, but the biggest difference would, of course, be the fact that the head is turned away from us, and also the legs are extended further out, kind of stretching the skin of the stomach, giving us a better visual of that, and of course showing off all of the impressive fine detail from PNSO, where you can see all of the skin stretching and wrinkling and, you know, all sorts of super fine details. One of the things that I think PNSO is always known for. We can also see tensing in the neck, again with the turn in the neck looking quite realistic, and the tail does also curve away from us on this side, which you can see. But overall, that is a really nice looking figure. I think the only thing that's almost slightly off-putting is the fact that the head has a little bit of a gloss coat to it, a little bit of a satin shine, but at the same time I also think it kind of draws attention to the face, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So it's kind of like 50-50 as far as that goes. But as far as a Coronosaurus goes, that is definitely a really beautiful version of it. And of course, like I said, the first version to enter my collection. As far as a size goes on this one, for a length from the tail to the beak, you're looking at just a hair over 6 inches or a little bit over 15 centimeters, and then for a height to the top of the frill, about 2 3/4 inches, maybe slightly over, or around 7 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being next to our Coronosaurus, and you can see again it's fairly small, pretty similar to like the Attack Pack or Danger Pack size range. And since I don't have any other Coronosaurus figures in my collection, I figured we would just do a few Ceratopsian comparisons, especially when it comes to some more of the recently released Ceratopsians from PNSO, as we first of all have the Stellosaurus, which we can see is also quite similar in size. We've also got the recently released PNSO Spiclipius, which as well is pretty close to the same size. Also, the fairly recently released Loki Ceratops from PNSO, which we can now see is a bit larger. And finally, one of the relatives of Coronosaurus, we also have the Centrosaurus here, which you can see is also pretty close to the same size as this Coronosaurus. I don't really know what else would make a good comparison piece here, again without having any other figures of this species, so hopefully these comparisons will help give you a pretty good idea of the size. So this brand new PNSO Coronosaurus is definitely another gorgeous release from them, and I must admit when I had first seen the images of it I thought, well, it's pretty nice looking, but not really as nice as I'm used to when it comes to like patterns. But honestly, having it here in hand, I think I really like that, and the paint apps look so much more alive in hand and in person than I thought they were going to, especially when it comes to the original promo images. And I don't know what's wrong with me, why I would ever doubt PNSO's paint jobs, because they're always stellar. You could definitely see that is exactly the case for this figure. The paint job is really well done, really natural, gorgeous tones of green, super nice wash applied, really smooth transitions between colors. So the paint apps, although nothing overly flashy, you look really good, really natural and lifelike. We also have a nice looking pose as it's walking along, you know, the 1 foot up off of the ground taking a step, and also the mouth open, which I think adds a nice bit of life to it. The fine detail, as per usual, is fantastic. PNSO always hammers out super impressive fine detail on their figures, and yet again you can see the same for this one here. And in general, the fact that it is a Coronosaurus is really exciting, again, because I did not have one prior, so I'm really happy to not only have one, but such an exceptionally beautiful one. So if you are interested in grabbing one and adding it to your collection, I will include links in the description to PNSO's AliExpress and Amazon stores where you can grab it right now. So make sure you do that, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.